you cut out the pattern pieces for the dress with paper scissors, you'll notice that there are 2 waistband pieces and you need to tape these together. So there's a mark on the one piece and mark on the other piece, and you line those up and tape them, and that will give you the finished waistband piece for when you do your layout. Setting up to do the layout for the bare dress now. And so I have here my fabric that I'm going to be using. I'm going to use this fabric for lining for the apron front piece of it. And then we need 2 buttons and a snap to finish it off. So starting with the striped fabric, if your fabric is quite wrinkled, you should iron it, which I have already done. And I did pre-wash this. If you are making this for a person, you should always pre-wash your fabrics. For the bare, probably not as important, but I wash everything just as good practice. So to start out with, what we have here is a piece of fabric. It's folded in half. These are the selvage edges here, fold line here right now, and this is a raw edge. It's frayed out a bit because I washed it. This is also a raw edge, but this one was cut with a pair of scissors, so it looks a little smoother than this one here. So you'll notice on your pattern that there is no pattern piece for the skirt. So we're actually just going to cut a strip of fabric to use for that. So I'm going to show you one technique that you can use to do this. So I'm going to start by straightening this edge. And to do that, I'm going to make a snip in the one of the selvages, and I'm going to tear across the entire piece of fabric. And the fabric will rip on the crosswise grain of the fabric here. And now I know this is a straight edge along this. So to cut the skirt, I'm going to take that edge and I'm going to measure 22 centimeters. And I'm going to make a cut in the edge there and rip across, and I'm just snipping through the selvage edge here. So what I have here is a strip of fabric that is 22 centimeters wide, and that goes the width of that piece of fabric, and this is going to be used for the skirt for the dress. So that is finished, and I'm just going to put that aside. The remaining fabric, we have some pieces that we need 2 of, for example the strap. We have the waistband, which we only need 1 of, and then we have this front piece which needs to be on the fold line. So I'm going to fold just a small part of this, and you want a nice even fold. You can actually measure it to make sure it's the same distance top and bottom. So just check this right now, but it looks pretty good to me. Yeah, this is good. And it needs to be folded wide enough so that you can fit both of these 2 pieces here. And so this one is going to go right on the fold line there, and this one will fit here. I'm going to be measuring the grain line. And then this one can just be opened up, and you can put the waistband here. So to pin, you're going to start by pinning the piece on the fold. And you want this lined up right on that folded edge, no gap there. And 2 pins to secure that to the fold line. And then you're going to pin the corners. So 1 here, and I'm putting my pins at right angles. So these corner pins I actually angle towards the center of the pattern. And I'm just going to do 1 up at the top here. I think that will be enough to hold it. Now this one has an arrow. This is a grain line arrow, so that needs to be straight with the grain of the fabric. So I'm going to pin one end of the arrow, and then with my tape measure, I'm going to measure over to the fold line. And I want both ends of this arrow to be the same distance from the fold line. So I just slightly adjusted that so that, and then I'm going to pin the other end of the arrow so that that is straight. And that's important for, again, it's more so for people clothing than for bare clothing, but important so that this will hang properly on the body and fit properly. So again, pinning the corners. I guess we'll put 2 here. And then the waistband doesn't have a grain line arrow, but it does have a center front line. So I'm going to start by pinning that and measuring that to make sure that it's straight. And when you're done pinning, you're going to cut these pieces out. And cut out around the notches. This little diamond here is called a notch. We use that to line up when we're sewing. This piece here, the front, needs to be cut twice because there's a lining piece. You could use this, although actually, well, it's wide enough. So I could use this stripe piece and use the same fabric, but I'm actually going to use this white fabric for my lining. So I just need a small piece here. And again, I'm going to fold it and take my pins out of this one for right now. And just folding it enough, making sure that the fold is even from the selvage. And then lining this up and pinning it and cutting it out. And that's our finished pieces all cut out along with the skirt piece. Now I want to transfer markings from the pattern to the fabric because the pattern won't be on the fabric when we're sewing. You can use a chalk pencil or you can use the tailor's chalk. Neither of these are good colors for my fabric, so I'm going to use my friction marker, which is my favorite most of the time. So we don't need to transfer seam lines because we have guidelines on the sewing machine that we'll use, but there is a dot here that needs to be transferred. And I took out some of the pins, just enough so I can reach this, but I did not take them all out because you don't want this to shift. So I'm putting a pin through where the dot is, and then on the wrong side of the fabric, and this white fabric actually has a right and a wrong side. It's got a little bit of a star pattern on it. So I'm going to mark the wrong side, which is the inside on this one. And I'm just making a mark where the pin is coming through there. And then I need to also mark this one that I cut earlier. So I'm just going to place this back on here and secure it with a pin. And then I will do the same thing. I'm going to poke the pin through that dot and mark the wrong side of the fabric where that dot is. And that's all that needs to be marked on this particular one. Then we have the strap. Now the strap does have a buttonhole. I'm actually going to wait and mark that later because I'm going to be ironing this and the markings that I make will disappear. So I will mark it before I do the buttonhole. The only thing that I'm going to mark is the fold line. It's not essential that I mark this because the fold line is halfway on the pattern, so it's just a matter of folding the fabric in half to know exactly where that is. So it's up to you if you want to take the time to do the marks there. I'm going to do a couple here, but like I said, this is not an essential point that needs to be marked. And I'm not marking the whole line, I'm just doing at each end. And that's the only thing there that needs to be marked. And then there's some markings on the waistband. And again, I'm not going to mark everything that's here. There are 2 dots here. I'm not going to mark those ones because I know that they're each 1.5 centimeters from the corner. And so I can find those on the sewing machine with the guidelines without marking them. You should mark these 2 dots here. So again, a pin through. I'm going to take these pins out. Actually, let's put a pin through both of these. And again, marking on the wrong side of the fabric. The other thing I want to mark is this center front line. So again, just a line on each side is all that's needed here. You don't have to draw the whole line. And then I want these dots right here. And again, marking each of these on the wrong side. And then the other dots I'm going to mark are these right here, where it says center back. Now there's also a picture of a button there. I am not going to mark that because I'm actually not going to put a button there. I'm going to put a snap, and I will be able to figure out where that goes later on as well. So those are the markings that you need. 2 dots here, 2 dots here, and 2 dots here.